Hello, FRYSC coordinators. Welcome to our Standards webinar series. I'm Melissa Goins, Director of the Family Resource and Youth Services Center program.
And I am Mary Ann Jennings, Assistant Director of the Family Resource and Youth Services Center program.
So Mary Ann and I wanted to take a few minutes today to talk to you about why we felt that having standards, adopting standards, was an important accomplishment for our program. The development of standards is a significant accomplishment for our field of practice, putting us in the same league as healthcare, childcare, education, and other fields that have long had standards. It's important for all of us to spend our time and efforts doing what works, and our adopted standards of practice include proven strategies for family support. Our standards were adopted by our national organization, the National Family Support Network, in 2013 from a team of leaders in our field that came together and agreed that we need some consistent practices that work across our field. Family Resource and Youth Services Centers had our own representative, Mike Denny, at the table in the developmental phase, and Randall Campbell, a FRYSC coordinator in Western Kentucky, had a seat at the table for the recent update, which allowed us to have input and ensure that it relates back to the FRYSC mission and vision. Local flexibility is always going to be a strength of the FRYSC program. Having standards of practice for all FRYSCs will help ensure that while we may meet the needs of families and students differently, we will all be committed to quality.
One of the ways that we've discussed using the standards of quality is with your advisory council. Our advisory councils serve many roles. They're advocating, they're working with accountability, and they're guiding our program. The standards of quality support your advisory council in all of these areas. They give the advisory council language to share information about not only the work that you're doing, but that your center is performing at a high level. Discussing your programming in the terms of the standards of quality allows your council to hear about your work and to help determine areas of growth. And finally, the standards of quality help guide discussions about your school community, their needs, and how the center can meet them. So when we look at the next steps of our standards of quality, we're going to continue to work them into the fabric of their program. They're a part of what Family Resource and Youth Services Centers do. Quality standards are not intended to be a one-time event or a one-time discussion. They're ongoing with our Family Resource and Youth Services Centers. Our centers base our programming on core and optional components and that local need that Melissa talked about. That's what we do in our centers. And then our quality standards build on that. And we're focusing on how we accomplish our goals and at high levels.
So thank you for participating in this webinar. Just you being here shows your commitment to the growth of your center and your practices as a coordinator for the Family Resource and Youth Services Center program.
All right, and welcome everyone. We're so glad that you're here for our fifth and final installment of Strengthen Through Standards. We're joined right now by Naila Iminyara Sirakali, and Randall Campbell is traveling today, but he is going to be joining in with us hopefully very soon. And if not, Naila, I'm here with you, and I'm happy to tag team with you. And so we're very glad that you're here. So I'm going to switch PowerPoints quickly here and switch over to Naila's PowerPoint. And we'll get ready to get started here. So here we go. There we go. Naila, I turn it over to you to take it away.
Thank you, Greg. Greetings, everyone. As Melissa had mentioned in the video, you being here does show your commitment to improving your program and your commitment to your families and your students. So I appreciate everyone that is here on this webinar, and I thank you for being here and giving your time. Today we're going to talk about the final section of our standards. It's last, but it's not least, of course, and it's the evaluation section. Just a few other things. If we look like we're going to have a small group unless we get a overwhelming number of people join in. But when you're talking, if possible, if we break out in a group, if you would turn your camera on if you can, if you have the bandwidth on your computer or laptop or tablet to do so. We would appreciate that. And then also, when you're not speaking, to keep yourself on mute. Just want to remind everyone of that. And if you have any questions or comments or something, suggestions that would help the group, please use the chat, and Greg will be assisting me with fielding questions in the chat. So thank you very much. Moving right along. So evaluation, this is going to be our discussion objectives. So we're going to review and discuss the updated information regarding the evaluation section of the standards. If you haven't had the training, I am going to do like a really quick, fast review as to what those are. The standards for the evaluation section did change. I think it's less. I think we had 4, and now we only have 3. And we're going to reflect a little bit back on our 360-degree planning and feedback loop, which some of you all are familiar with that. And then we're going to have a short discussion on how are we doing with putting this information into practice. What are you doing at your centers to evaluate your programs? What's working, what's not working? Just kind of have a dialogue about that. We may either have a large group, or we may break out in small group discussion. So when we talk about evaluation, we know that evaluation is an ongoing process of assessing what works and what needs to be modified in relation to achieving your program goals, your activities, your workshops. Evaluation is an important part of regular program planning, program implementation, staff training, achieving positive results for families. So effective evaluation collects and combines data on program participation, quality, and outcomes. And so this is nothing new to any of us. We know we have to evaluate our programs just to show that we're fiscally responsible. And we also, we share this information with our stakeholders, so that they can see, what we are doing and what the results and what the impact is. So family strengthening and support evaluation incorporates families as partners in the process, which we know as we do that with our advisory councils. The program collects and shares evaluation data in partnership with staff members, families, and stakeholders to ensure that it produces meaningful results. So this section reflects the principle of the Family Support Principle 8, which states, programs are flexible and continually responsive to emerging family and community issues. And then also the Family Support Principle number 9, which states, principles of family support are modeled in all program activities, including planning, governance, and administration. And the evaluation section also aligns with all of the protective factors. So the entire protective factor framework, because building the protective factors lead to positive outcomes for children and families. So next slide, please.
Ayla, would this be a good time for our evaluation poll?
Yes.
The pretest?
Yes. Great.
All right. Well, on your screens, you should see our pretest. So how would you rate your comfort level with actually implementing the evaluation standards at your center? And so we have a scale from 0 to 5 with some fun descriptive sentences. So if you take just a quick second to go ahead and answer that, I've got 42%. We just crossed 63%, 68. We got 13 of 19. And there's a couple of us, myself as I'm a host, who can't participate. So we'll give it just another, we'll give it another 15 seconds. That'll be a minute. We're up to 73%, and then I'll share the results. All right, let me go ahead and end that poll. We got up to 77%, and here are the results. So we've got a lot of solid 3s is our winning. We've got a good number of 4s. We've got at least one person that's a 5, which is good because I think we have at least one other standards trainer here. But then also some 0s and some 2s. And keep in mind, I see 3 of you replied that you haven't been trained on the standards yet. We are so glad that you're here because this is an initial exposure. And let me just say, if you haven't been here prior, we are rolling out the new standards that have just been updated, largely through the help of Randall Campbell. So everybody is going to have an opportunity over the next 6 to 8 months to be trained up in the standards. So if you haven't seen them before, you're going to see the new ones. If you have been trained, you'll get to see the update and get refreshed on this stuff. All right, so let me go ahead and stop that share and turn it back over to Naila.
All right, thank you, Greg. So next slide, please. So as we look at this side, this next few slides came directly from your new manual, which you will be getting. And I believe Greg sent a link out that you can also get the manual through a PDF form if you want to kind of get it and start perusing through it and looking through it. So I know you all, those who have had the training, we remember our arrows, right? Our arrows give us the information that moves us from foundational quality to high quality. And I want to share with you all, remember, we were at minimum quality before, and now we are not calling it minimal quality, we're calling it foundational quality now. So that was one of the changes that you may have heard if you've been on these webinars prior, that has been updated. So with our evaluation, to move from foundational quality, we have data analysis, sharing evaluation results, and program modification. So putting those 3 elements intentionally into the work that you're doing will move you from foundational quality into a deeper integration and making it more high quality work. So when we look at data analysis, we're talking about program reviews and interpret data related to program participation, quality, and outcomes. Programs may look at both qualitative data and quantitative data, such as qualitative data such as case studies. So you may you may want to quantify, you may want to get anecdotal data, people's opinions. All of that can be built into your evaluation. And then you want to share your evaluation results. What good is it if you get the evaluation, okay, you've done, your data analysis, and then it goes nowhere, right? So you want to share that data, share those evaluation results, and you want to share that results with the families foremost, and they should be updated on what you've discovered, and then also with staff members, very important, administration, with not only just, when I say staff members, not only just teachers, but then other people within the school that you work with, the custodian, the lunchroom people, and then other stakeholders like our legislators, your local, policymakers. So you want to share those results. And then finally, you want to make any program modifications as a result from your evaluation and what you discovered, right? To ensure that we're in that continuous quality improvement mode. So this process will help the program to meet unique and changing needs of the community and or population served. And we've already, I think everybody across the state has already had that needs training, needs assessment training. And so, we're using all of these things in, together to make our programs better. So any questions on that? Anybody got any questions? Greg, any questions in the chat?
Actually, I think we just, no, not yet. So I just put a comment in the chat though. If you have any thoughts, any comments, any discussions, any issues you've had trying to implement evaluation pieces through your advisory council, please, please, please speak up and share. We'd much rather have your participation and have this be an active discussion. So please, please, please use the chat box. just an affirmation like, yeah, that happened to me, or that, that reminds me of something that did work or didn't work in my center.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. If you've had some successes, we want to hear about that. If you've had some, things that didn't work, that will also help people not repeat everything, that that you did that didn't potentially work. It may work for them, but just to have a conversation about it really helps. So
I feel like we're doing everything we can to just pull stuff out of y'all.
pull to get you to talk. We want y'all to be interacting. If you want to talk, just unmute yourself and share your thoughts as well.
Absolutely. We're all friends here. I think you're ready for the next slide.
Yes, sir. So this next slide is my attempt to redo the 360 degrees planning loop. And I apologize for the arrows. It was late and I was just having problems with this. So I did it the best that I could. And I feel like it served our purpose. So if you look at it, we look at number one. Thanks, Andrea. We look at number one, program surveys potential participants. And so that's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to do a survey. We all do our what we consider our needs survey. So we survey our participants, or we also do gather other data information as well, I would say, into making a good needs assessment. And then we want to go to number two. The coordinator develops from that that needs survey or assessment. We want to develop a list of potential workshops, topics, and activities that you may want to bring to help address these needs, right, and fill in these gaps. And then you're going to take that to your advisory council, and you're going to talk it over with them and share your the analysis of your data, right? And then you're going to, with the help of your advisory council, decide which topics, workshops, activities are you going to present for the year. And then you do the activity, right? Number four, the center actually conducts the workshops and activities. And then once you do that, again, you're going to and the participants complete the activity, then you want to do an evaluation, get their opinions on how things went, what did they learn. You can evaluate the outcome of the program or activities to see if this is something you want to continue to do in the future. And then it takes you back to number 6, which is, program reviews. Evaluation. So you'll look at the evaluations and review it and see if you need to make any modifications. And then you start the loop all over again for each time you're going to change your programs or activities. So is there any questions about that? That's pretty simple. We call that the 360 degrees planning and feedback loop. You've seen this probably also, and like I said, in our needs assessment training as well. Do we have any questions, any comments?
So the only comments right now in the chat are positive affirmations about this is perfectly fine and how we're always our own harshest critics. But no, thank you for putting this together, Naila.
You're welcome. All right, so moving right along. Again, this came directly from the new manual. I haven't got my new manual yet either, but I was able to pull this from the PDF that Randall actually sent to me. So as you can see here, this is the standard evaluation point 1, E.1. Program collects and analyzes information related to program participation, as we mentioned before through our loop. Foundational quality, E1.1, program tracks program activities, participant characteristics, and service utilization. And if you see the arrow, these are the elements that will move us from foundational to high quality. I was getting ready to say the other one, but it's foundational through to high quality. And high quality, the indicator is program tracks and intentionally analyzes program activities, participant characteristics, and service utilization in relation to its goals, objectives, and community needs. and appropriate program modifications are made as a result. And if you can see, I'm not going to read all of this. There's examples that are listed. You can take your time while I'm talking and read through it if you like. And the reason, and on the next ones, I didn't put the examples, but the reason why I put these examples was because if you look under the high quality, one of the examples says the program analyzes participants' postal zip code data and makes adjustments to address equity of access. And we've been talking about a lot about equity and inclusion. And I think, wow, that's a great way to make sure, if especially in Jefferson County, we know which people live, particularly which ethnic groups live in what zip code. You can make sure you can check those codes to see which codes are coming from, to your school to make sure that they're being included as well in your programs. So that was one of the reasons why I listed the examples here to just kind of give you an idea of how you can move what you normally do, just a sign-in sheet, that kind of thing to record names, but then taking that and intentionally making sure that your programs are more inclusive. So anybody has any questions about that?
So I'm still trying to draw out responses from folks. And so we have a quick chat blast. What have you been most successful in gathering and analyzing data at your center, and how have you used that data? So Jenny said Google Forms and feeding feedback into spreadsheets. Needs a better way to make it bilingual though. Lisa mentioned as an RPM, she's been using a lot of exit tickets and analyzing feedback from her coordinators to plan future regional meetings. Andrea chimed in with Google Form on provided iPad at family events. So all great ways of actually implementing the standard.
Right. Thank you
Sure.
for that feedback, and thank you, Greg. Okay, let's move on because I want to get through.
Yep, and a quick nod, Sierra Bowman, send surveys via text message. So
text messages.
Yep.
Okay. So standard E2 is program collects and analyzes information related to program quality. E2.1 foundational quality indicator is program conducts an annual self-assessment utilizing the standards of quality for family strengthening and support program self-assessment tool. And for those who have already taken the standards training, you should know what the self-assessment tool is because you had to fill it out when we trained you all. So this is something that you should do annually. You should look at a minimum, at a foundational level. You should look at that every year just to kind of do that self-assessment. And then other appropriate program assessment tools, you should be doing that on a regular basis. Now, what moves you from foundational to high quality? Let's see. Let's look at the arrow. So it says data analysis and program modification. That will move you to 2.1, high quality indicator, which is program analyzes results of annual self-assessment. So you're even analyzing the results of how you assess yourself. And then tools and other appropriate program assessment tools to inform program planning efforts and make appropriate modifications. So as you know, it's not just taking the assessment and just putting it aside, but looking at the results and looking at other tools and results to kind of help you make the necessary modifications if you need to. Next. And next we have the E.2, program collects and analyzes information related to program quality again. That's continued, but this time we have E2.2, which is program invites and records feedback regarding program quality from families and other stakeholders, such as service provider partners. And what will move us additionally to high quality is we're analyzing the data, we're sharing the results, and we're actually making those program modifications. And then the high quality indicator is program analyzes and shares feedback regarding program quality. So you analyze the data and you share the feedback to, as we mentioned, to families and other stakeholders. And then you're making that appropriate program modification when you get those results. So it's pretty simple. I think the main thing is just remembering to do those evaluations and doing them intentionally. Whether it's formal or informal, it's just recording the results and taking that back and sharing that with your stakeholders and then making those modifications. All right. Next, we have the third and final standard in evaluation. There was only 3. Program collects and analyzes information related to program outcomes. Your foundational quality indicator. Program tracks data on participant and program outcomes. And what will move us again is those 3, I think it's 3, yeah, 3 that we mentioned before: data analysis, sharing evaluation results, and making those program modifications will help us get to high quality, which is, again, I know it's so repetitive, and when I was reading this, but sometimes we need to hear the same thing over and over. Program analyzes data on participants and program outcomes and utilizes it to demonstrate accountability to stakeholders, modify the program, and to inform policy change as needed. So that is what, when we're talking about including our policymakers and sharing our results, like when we use our impact reports, that information is actually shared with our legislators and other stakeholders so they can actually see, what we're doing and see the results that we're getting from our data. All righty. And that is really all of the changes in evaluation section. There's only 3 standards. And next, Greg, it is time to talk. So it's time for you all to talk. We can't hear you, Greg. There you go.
Sorry about that. Happens at least once a day, so I do it too. So yeah, Natalie, would you like to have a little bit of a group discussion here? I do have 2 breakout discussions ready, and I even have a poll for you to pick which of the 2 you'd like to do, although I think we've got enough time we can do both. So we may not need the poll.
So the question is, what are some ways you are evaluating, analyzing, and sharing and modifying your programs and activities? Because I know you all are already doing this, because we get, our impact reports and we get information from you all. We gather information from you all on the state level all the time. So what are you all doing? And, we want to hear, what are you doing? What is working for you? And maybe, if you've had some challenges, this is a safe space to even say, yeah, I've had some challenges. I need some help in this area. So are we going to break out, or are we going to do group?
We can do either. So that is completely up to you. We can do a large group discussion right now, since there's only, let's see, there's about 22 of us. I do have breakout groups ready if you want to just split them in half and have 2 slightly smaller discussions.
Okay, we can break out for a moment. I want you all to, and that'll give you kind of like a smaller group, and then we'll report out, take some time to report out. So we'll break out into a smaller group. We want you to identify someone to be your reporter and recorder, either way, or vice versa, but somebody to be able to share what you discussed in your group.
Sounds great. And Naila, how long would you like them to be away? I've got it set right now with 10 minutes and a 30-second countdown, but I can extend that a little bit if you'd like.
See, it's 1 o'clock. And this runs till 1:30, correct?
We have a half hour. Yeah, we're doing
okay.
Well
So let's do 10 minutes.
Okay, 10 minutes it is. All right, everybody. Now, what's going to happen for the purposes of the recording? We're going to keep one of the breakout groups here in the main room, and everybody else is going to go into a separate group. And Naila, you will be with that group, so you can facilitate that one.
Okay.
All right. We'll see y'all back in 10 minutes. All right. It looks like the breakout group is all joined up. We've got a couple people, Sierra, India, and Jill, that are still connecting over. So I'd say for all three of you, just kind of check. There should be a little dot at the bottom right of your screen.
1152021.
All right. And am I still sharing screen in the breakout?
Yes.
Okay, let me turn that off. But one more time, there's the prompt. What are some ways you are evaluating, analyzing, sharing, and modifying your program at your center? Who wants to go first?
I'll go.
Thanks, Jenny.
You're welcome. So we actually just did, I teamed up with Maggie over at the Beacon, our youth service center portion, and we are doing a mental health sort of check on our 5th grade rising 6th graders. Just because they had a crap year, everybody did, I know, but you know, 5th grade, they're like, oh, we got to go to a 5th grade trip. No, they went to a park and played. So it was just like, and it was a walking trip, like we couldn't even get a bus. So anyway, we were trying to do something, and we just got done delivering yard signs to 120 kids. Next is a bulldog, which is their mascot for the middle school, bulldog doggy bag. And they get a decal for their water bottle that they're going to get at Bulldog Boot Camp, which is their orientation. They're going to get a magnet for their fridge for their parents to contact the school effectively. And among, you know, like snacks and stuff like that. But there was a form attached with QR codes and a way to type in a link to have the kids fill out on if they're excited, if they're taking care of themselves, like changing clothes after they get up in the morning and brushing their teeth and bathing and that kind of thing. We also didn't get to have the puberty talk this year. So that's going into 6th grade, and we're teaming up for that too, because that was kind of on me and the nursing staff, and it just didn't work this year. And it basically, we're hoping that we can connect data from their mental health aspect of taking care of themselves to how they're going to go into middle school and how the middle school can target programming for them and their families. And then I'll know kind of going into this 5th grade year too, kind of the mindset of those 5th graders, because those kids had a crap year too, the 4th graders rising into 5th grade. So we're kind of trying to keep it rolling. And teaming up seemed like a good idea just because I'm still pretty green, and all of my stuff this year was virtual and it wasn't very participated in. So we've been using forms and paper copies for parents to fill out, but this one, we actually opened it up and said, if you want to get on social media and just tag us, if you want to email me, Jenny Clark, and you can do that. So I got emails yesterday talking about, oh, my kid needed this. They were so nervous about middle school. And it's just a lawn sign that says Future Bulldog, but they were super excited. And I've actually had parents of the high school kids that are going into high school. Can we get a sign for them? And so I've forwarded them on to Maggie, which I'm sure she's great with. But I think using Google Forms is a huge one, just because I can make pie charts from the data. I can do, like, this was working, this did not work. And we have dropped some programs just because it repeated stuff that was in the community since I came in, and we just don't need to do it. And I think if we can focus more on what our students in the buildings need from us for them and their families right now, it'll work for us a little bit better. But yeah, that's how we've been collecting things. Now, analyzing so much I haven't done, but hopefully it's going to get better as I get more into this. But I really do like these Strengthening Through Standards trainings because I needed it. So thank you guys.
Hey, we're glad to have you. And Jenny, thanks for kicking things off. I think you brought up a neat point there with the crap year. So Lisa and I, no, seriously. So Lisa and I are both here. And one of the teaches that we did back in December was on evaluations. So that kind of gave me the idea, and maybe some people have some thoughts on this. What do we do with the data from this year? I mean, because it's going to be complete outlier, right? Like, it's not the programs we meant to do. It's the programs we were left able to do. And so how does that feedback inform future decisions? Is it, does the data just go out the window and we start over next year? Is there still stuff we can get from that data?
There's totally stuff we can get from it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear thoughts on what you all think on that.
We call it, so this is, my husband says this a lot because he does a lot of like analytical stuff. He calls it sand in the soil. So like every little piece of soil helps something, but sometimes there's little bits of sand, and maybe it'll help the roots, maybe it won't. But we're just rolling the sand into the soil and just hoping something grows out of it. And with that teaming up effort, I know coming in, evidently there wasn't a lot of teaming up, and that was cool. Like, I don't know any of this, but I think working together with the different centers, and where I didn't get to go to a center and like do what the new coordinators are supposed to do, and observation wise, we weren't allowed in buildings, and I finally just said, okay, I'll do it next year. Like, I'll figure it out. And so I collected a lot of information from Maggie, and I'm lucky she thinks the way I do on analysis and organization and things like that. So we were kind of on the same page with a lot of things, but yeah, sand in the soil, just hoping that every little bit can grow into something either effective or something we could pass on to another community resource and help them grow it.
Great. Well, thank you. Anybody else? Oh, go ahead.
If you just make it like one of the, I can't remember which, I was trying to look at my old workbook, but one of the high quality indicators was intentionality. And, you know, we're not going to be expert evaluators and analysts right out of the gate. It's the intentionality that will carry you to high quality. If whatever you're doing, you are intentional about, after it's done, doing a post evaluation, or if you do a pre and post survey, or just reflecting yourself on, okay, these were my objectives. Did the participants gain the knowledge of what my objectives were? You can do that yourself. You can go to teachers and ask them for their opinions. You can go to, few students and just informally interview them. To get feedback doesn't have to have always a formal structure. Now, formal structure is great. We like formal structure, and that carries you to that high quality. But you can also come up with 3 or 4 questions that you're asking teachers or your parents or your students, and writing down their observations, and then coming back and putting that all into, when I was a coordinator, I used the large group activity sheets all the time. And I had a notebook that I kept my sign-in sheets, and the large group activity sheet was on the top. And I wrote notes all over that front page about what I would do different for next year, because I cannot remember anything. And so anytime I went to plan my program, I always went back to last year's notebook and looked at that cheat sheet. That's what I called it. But now I think that the new large activity form has a place on there for you to actually put your reflections and your analysis on there. So yay. Just my input.
1 minute, by the way. Time flies. Anyone else have anything to share?
I want to jump in on the whole Google Forms and how excited I am that everybody says Google Forms all the time. But yeah, I'm the big cheerleader for Google. But one of the things that I learned while learning how to use that, and this goes to that intentionality piece, is when you're designing a form, ask yourself, what are you going to do with the information that you get back? Because it's so easy to just say, "Ooh, I'd just like to know," fill in the blank. But if you're not going to use that data or use that information, really question whether or not you want to put that in some kind of an evaluation form, but really think as you're designing that, what are you going to do with the data? What are you going to do with the answers that you receive? That's helped me a lot. And I learned that the hard way. I always like to try to save people those hard lessons when you've got this ginormous spreadsheet and you're not going to use half of it anyway. So
that's a lesson that I learned from Melissa. One of the very first lessons that when she taught me Google Forms, she's like, this is something you need to know. So technically our 10 minutes are up, but since I'm here with you, I actually have the pop-up that controls the breakout rooms. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add before I close this round? All right, we're gonna have about 30 seconds. So you have a 30-second countdown before they all have to pop back in our room.
Hey, Jenny, where are you from?
Danville Independent.
Oh, okay.
Region 6.
All right, welcome back, breakout group.
My, how time flies. Oh my goodness.
Indeed. And actually that was a little extra time.
Wow.
We
I know,
left them
thank
open.
you. And we appreciate that because we were still talking.
And here's the thing, we can continue those conversations in a second breakout group, but do you want to do a quick report out on what's been shared so far?
I do. In our group, one of the issues that came up was about those programs that we consider our sacred cows. And how do you, what do you do about those sacred cows? I mean, we do our evaluation, we do our assessment, needs assessment, we do our needs survey, but yet those sacred cows are those programs that still come up that our administrators want us to do. And so as we discussed in our group was you can still take that sacred cow program and look for ways on how to do it better, how to intentionally make some improvements, modifications in that program to help you achieve some of your goals and objectives. It could be you want to improve attendance. What could you bring to that sacred cow program that help you improve attendance? It could be you want to present something on drug and alcohol awareness. What can you intentionally bring to that sacred cow program to modify it, to add to it, to help move you from that foundational quality into that high quality? And those will be intentionally putting things in where you can evaluate, analyze, and then make those modifications. So we talked about that. A lot of people agreed that we have these sacred cow programs that we have to do, but there are ways that we can modify them. So that was in our group. What's the second group?
Would somebody from the group 1 like to share what we were talking about?
I'll share a piece of what I shared was on our FRYSC website. There is on the forms and documents page is a sample of a large group activity information form. And as a coordinator, this was before we had the standards, I use this form a lot to make my notes for things that I wanted to improve, whether it be that I collected the data from an evaluation at the end, or it was opinions and from surveying a sample of teachers or parents or students that attended the program. But I would always keep my information on this large activity form because I kept the next year, if I did the program, I'd go back and look at what I did. And now with our standards language, this form has been updated for you to actually put your planning notes on there and where it would fall on the continuum, except I think it needs to be updated because it still says minimum, but we'll get that fixed.
And also, for some people who had mentioned that if you're not very technologically savvy and don't want to use Google and you still want to do the old-fashioned way with pen and pencil, paper and pencil, you can still do evaluation and evaluate, the people who are at your programs that way. it's nothing wrong with it. It may take you a little longer and gather, getting your results. But you can still do it that way and still be able to have some feedback, whether you get to poll all the people and survey all the people or just some of the population. If you have a large group, you can still do that and get some significant feedback. So I just want to make sure I put that out there, because I think some people were like, oh, I'm not technologically savvy. How can I, still be able to get those results that I'm looking for? So
on a similar tangent, in our breakout group, we also talked about what are we going to do with the data from this year? Because the data is so different, right? Our programs were not what we would normally do. They had to be done very differently. So what will that data even mean? And Jenny brought up some good points that, look, it's all good data. And so it's just how we use it. And so find in the data what will help us go forward, maybe keeping some of the hybrid virtual elements, maybe lessons learned that we can apply to in-person activities and so on.
right.
Any other thoughts on what Naila mentioned from the other group? Or the two groups, any thoughts about the other?
I just thought I would jump in real quick and say, sometimes those sacred cow programs, because we did spend a lot of time, sometimes they get you a lot of bang for your buck. And sometimes if it's just about getting families and communities in, because a lot of times that's what I think those are, that's not a total waste of time. Use that to your advantage to build relationships, to gather some kind of data that can support what you're doing. I shared real quick because I think it was one of the better things I did to turn something around. We had a principal who loved open gym night because people would come in and it'd be crazy. And it made me crazy because I was always afraid somebody was going to get hurt. And it was kind of one of those things that was put in my lap. They were like, oh yeah, that'd be great. You can do it after hours. And we turned it into an educational component. We had our PE teacher come in and he would do some of the stuff we were doing. Two things I remember specifically is we did a dance thing where the parents came in and we had been doing basic ballet poses for the kids to learn. Parents got to do that, got to learn the language, got to learn what was actually going on. We did one for Jump Rope for Heart Month, and we had handed out jump ropes and people got to practice and parents got to show off a little bit what they knew. But over time, like we gathered data about, it was just self-reported, but what your resting heart rate was, and then how many minutes you exercised a week usually. And so it gave us something quantifiable at the end that actually showed people said their resting heart rate was better. I don't know, but it gave us something to go on that educating people did help, that it was worthwhile. So if you've got a program like that, just in your little frisky mind, keep turning it over and thinking, how can I prove this helps? Because it is pretty good for people to come play together. How can I prove that it helps? So just one idea,
Right.
one feeding off that. But
Right. And looking for those ways to modify your program. So, I mean, that's what this is all about. This is a learning situation. We're continually improving. And how do we do that? We do that by putting intentional thought into the programs and services that we provide and activities that we provide, and then continually analyzing and modifying those programs to fit the immediate needs. So that's kind of like the bottom line. We can't say it any clearer. And as as you grow your tenure, for those who's been around, they kind of have to reinvent themselves. And for those who are new, as you grow your tenure, then you learn new ways of doing old things. Same thing, you just learn new ways, right?
The phrase that keeps ringing in my head from the needs assessment is, are we doing these programs because they're popular, or are we doing these programs to meet the needs that, Naila, you just discussed in that 360 loop? And so being intentional about those sacred cows and getting that in, I think is something that we all could think about, and maybe we should talk about some more.
Yeah, and I
Not
think
necessarily right now, but
sharing that, when you do your needs assessment, a broad needs assessment, sharing those results with your administrator, and then, looking at ways to modify some of the things, those sacred cow programs, and getting buy-in from your administrators, from your advisory council. I think that would all help and supporting, making those modifications in those sacred cow programs too. So.
In the chat box, I did notice, Sharon, I see your comment now about specific examples about what foundational quality looks like through those 3 standards and what high quality does. That was kind of a draft of the new standards. So generally speaking, they usually do have examples in there, and that we'll be developing activity. So you'll see more of that in the actual standards training, where we'll look at concrete examples. Now, that said, if you all want to share any examples of what it's looked like in your centers. We probably don't have enough time for another breakout, so it's probably better to just wrap up our conversations here. And we do have a couple more things left, just real quickly before you leave. We do have an exit poll. We will have the PD info for your PD tracking sheet for your new year. Hopefully everybody's completed and saved their PD tracking form from last year, since they're due today. Had to get that plug in. And then finally, what's the other thing that we're missing? Oh, the exit survey. And I'll put that in the chat. So we have probably about 5 more minutes before we have to wrap those things up.
Right. Let me say, I guess, one other thing, since someone asked about what does high quality look like. And in terms of evaluation, and I'm going to sound redundant because I've said this. High quality looks like you as a coordinator evaluating programs that you normally do. Take any program that you do and intentionally evaluating that and seeing what was accomplished. Did you accomplish your objective in doing this program? And then taking that information and sharing that with your advisory council, sharing that with your families. If it's a continual program, taking and sharing that with your families and your students, and then sharing that with your administrators, sharing that with, other staff members in the school. So you're doing these things intentionally, not just haphazardly, but intentionally. I'm putting more effort into making sure that I'm sharing this information. I did a little short survey. We did a little, for instance, I'm making this up, but we did like a girls' camp for 6 weeks. And then we evaluated, we did a pre and a post to see, what information we wanted to glean from that. And taking that information, analyzing it, seeing if it was beneficial, sharing that with your stakeholders, and then making modifications. Maybe the session that we did on abstinence wasn't popular amongst the group, modifying it, say, well, we won't do that next year, we'll do something else, making those modifications. But anytime you do that intentionally, that's all that we're asking for you to do, and documenting your results and sharing your results. So really, that's all it looks like. There is really no, you can use in the manual, you will see examples. We kind of really don't like giving you all examples because we don't want y'all to just think that's the only way to do it. We want you to be creative and do it the way you see to do it. You all are very creative in in the programs that you all do. So we want you to be able to say, hey, I used to just get sign-in sheets. And then so I bumped it up. I'd start getting, you still get the sign-in sheets, but then what else do you do with that? Just kind of like the example I gave before, like, okay, now I analyze the zip codes and seeing where my families are actually coming from. And now I see that I'm not getting a certain population from this zip code. What can I do to make it more inclusive and accessible? So just putting that kind of thought and ideal into the programs that you're doing is what we're looking for when we say high quality. So I hope that kind of helped answer that question. So
that sounds great. I have a quick question. So I see some familiar faces here. By a show of hands or using the little reaction thing down at the bottom of the Zoom screen, how many of you have been here for all 5 of the Strengthen Through Standards episodes, or you went back and watched an archive of one you might have missed? I mean, I had to be here, Jenny, so Sharon, that only sort of counts. Sharon, I thought April, you'd been here. Brittany, I see your hand.
I'm doing it today.
Jenny. Yep. And here's the thing. Yeah, if you've seen almost all of them, you can go back and watch the archives. The only one that I don't have up yet, and it should be up by later today, is the previous one, episode 17. But that, Sharon, thank you for staying on me on that. It will be up. It is the next thing on my agenda as this one processes, and we'll get that one up, and then this one will follow it right afterwards. Remember that they are good for 1 hour of PD credit. And while the approval codes, and let me go ahead and share that, while the approval codes switch between the years, remember, like with all training, the PD credit counts for when you attended. So if you were to go back and right now decide you wanted to watch all the Strengthened Through Standards episodes, the first 2 were technically in last training year, but if you go ahead and watch them today, this counts towards your PD credit going forward, even though the codes will be from last year. Okay, so there is the approval code. It is 0062122. Let me go ahead and put this in chat as well. There it is. So there's the approval code 0062122 for today's episode. And then if you would click on that exit slip before you leave us today. But we have one last thing. Let me go ahead and put up the poll. Let's see, because we're talking today about evaluation. And like Lisa and Melissa both mentioned, pre and post testing. Let's see how we're feeling now about implementing standards in our individual centers. So if you can take a second before you go to that exit slip and go ahead and fill out this poll. This one's easy. This is just one question. That would be great, and we appreciate that. And while we're giving people just a little bit of space to do that, any last thoughts or comments or questions or feedback on this this entire series of Strength?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sharon.
I just wonder if anybody else has trouble, like for some of my programs, I have a really hard time getting some of the family members to do the evaluations. You know, they'll put their name on it, you know, and skip most of the stuff, and because I have a lot of the same families that keep coming, and they don't really understand how important it is, you know, for us to get this information. And they just think, you know, oh, you know, I'm here. That's all that matters.
Yeah. Anybody have any good suggestions? See, so from my point of view, I make PD credit dependent on doing the evaluation. So I get pretty good feedback most of the time. But anybody have a solution or a thought on that in your center?
I know, you know, when we did the evaluation, when we did the training on standards, you know, there was something tied to that piece of paper, getting that piece of paper back. Like, I'm not going to give you this until you give me that. You know,
don't get that door prize. Yeah.
Right.
Entry
you know,
into the door prize
or
drawing,
it could
right?
it could be a door prize. It could be a door prize ticket. Like, we're going to have a drawing, or it could be, you know, whatever it is. If you're giving certificates at the end, well, you don't get the certificate till I get the evaluation back. That's kind of how it was for us.
And 2, educating them about why it's important to do the evaluation. When you give it out, say, this guides my work for the next time we do something. You know, I do that with my regional meetings. And if I make a change to a future meeting or training, I'm sure to go back and say, the reason we're doing this is because of the feedback I got from the last training. So
give them buy-in.
It makes people feel like, okay, well, my input does matter because it's being used to guide the work, which is what we're doing anyway. We just might not always say that.
Right.
And while I would say I love to have total involvement, it's not bad. I mean, it doesn't make it wrong if you only have a sample of that population who attended.
Right.
If you had 100 people there and you've got 10 of them who filled out an evaluation, that could be a representative sample. Now, it may not be perfect in our world, but it could still be useful data that you can use. You know.
I was going to say that too.
Speaking of useful data, so here are the poll results, and almost everyone has chosen a 4 at this point. And for those of you that haven't been trained on the standards, you actually had a little mini training today, but we can't wait for you to actually get to experience the whole thing. And it is now 1:29. So I think at this point, let me point you towards that link in the chat. So again, speaking of good data, please, please, please go ahead and fill out the exit slip. And I promise you, we do look at those exit slips, especially now that we are wrapping up our Strengthen Through Standards Wednesday webinar. Now, very likely there is not going to be a Wednesday webinar 2 weeks from now, because in 2 weeks from now, you are hopefully going to be at Victory Over Violence. And there are going to be 2 breakout sessions as part of that, one in week 1, one in week 2. And there's also going to be some panel discussions and some other opportunities to participate in that way. So 2 weeks from now, we will see you at VOV, and then we'll send announcements for when we're going to be resuming the webinars, assuming that we do carry these forward. I think that they've been valuable, so we'll see, and we'll look at modifying those as well.
Well, we're going to say a big thank you to Greg and his technical support. I truly appreciate him and Melissa. They are wonderful when it comes to a lot of this technology stuff. I appreciate them so much. And thank you all for your time and chiming in and tuning in. We do appreciate you and we value your time. So I just want to say thank you. And thank you to Andrea and Lisa, my fellow RPMs.
We're always here to learn.
I appreciate your support as well.
Thanks, Naila. You did a great job. I appreciate all that you always bring to standards. I feel like you definitely make our A game an A+ game. So thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ditto.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you all so much, and we'll send you out on a little bit of music.